Willkommen in der Kolonie, Baby!
We already know that the Valley of Mines will be bigger in the remake, but to what extent? In a recent interview with PC Games, it was said that the world will be 10 to 15% bigger. In an older interview, the number was around 20%. Well, the release is set to be in 2024, and I think it is safe to assume that it won't come out in the first 2 quarters. That will give the developers still a lot of time to polish and maybe even add a few new things. Even though the introduction of novelties might be a fine addition to the cult classic, I think they have to take care about the old things that we haven't seen, the things that got scrapped for whatever reasons, most likely because of time limitations. When we think of an unfinished Gothic game, we directly point our fingers to the 3rd installment, but what if I told you that the first entry of the franchise was also heavily underdeveloped? Gothic was originally planned to be very different, and if we take a look at the early design documents, it becomes clear that a lot has changed since the early days, but that might be a story for another time. Today, I want to get into locations, those which were planned and even partially developed but never implemented into the final product. We are all familiar with the road leading to the old mine, but following this trail of dirt, it will lead us straight into a wall of rock. If we take a look above, we see a huge gaping void where a mountain should be. This was the second mountain pass where ore and new convicts got exchanged. The History of Karina's channel has a video about this subject as well. This is where I got these screenshots from. A big area with huts and ruins is clearly visible, and you can see that this version of the game is pretty old, judging by the UI. If I remember correctly, this location should have been overrun by trolls and hence got deserted by the forces of the old camp. And the other mountain pass, the one we started the game at, became the main exchange place. A different angle shows us the path leading away from the mine, and we can even spot one of these caves with a room inside. We can find these cave rooms all over the colony. In other versions of the game, a massive wooden barricade can be seen blocking the entrance to the mountain, which would kind of confirm the presence of trolls. You see, the old mine is the most important excavation in the colony. The ore barons wouldn't want any interferences with the production, so they tried to seal off this way into the troll territory. However, the story of this long-lost area doesn't end there, and to my surprise, this flaw got fixed in the just recently released Switch version. Since I don't own this piece of technology, I couldn't record any footage, but found some on Reddit, thanks to the user TheCallJ. The ugly mountainside is gone, and once again we see the huge barricade from earlier versions. We follow the way, and lo and behold, an enormous canyon opens up before our very eyes. The pass is destroyed by a landslide, and huge rocks and boulders deny us access to whatever lies beyond. Some Redditors weren't impressed by this, but who takes people from Reddit serious anyway? This is a big change. They didn't only fix the ugly mountainside, but also confirm the existence of another way into the Valley of Mines. With all that said, I hope that the remake will open up this space, introducing us to an area which unfortunately got cut due to time constraints during development. The abandoned mine is found on the left-hand side once we pass the exchange zone. It is protected by a grate, and in Gothic 2, it is used as a way to get back to Karina's. In the first game, using cheats to teleport behind the blockage, you can technically enter this instance. A loading screen will pop up, but then darkness. The thing is that this mine is devoid of any lighting and texture, so basically a black screen, but don't be fooled. The complete layout of the mine was already finished by the devs back in the day, meaning that the main structure is actually existent. Some mods integrated the derelict mine into the game, for example the Gothic 1 Definitive Edition or Gothic 2 Returning. The footage shown is taken from Returning. Keep in mind that most of the items like torches, benches, any type of furniture for that matter, light sources and textures are the work of the modder. This version, however, can give you a good impression of what this mine was supposed to look like. It is much smaller than the old and the free mine, but its layout is very different and interesting. While the old mine is essentially one massive vertical shaft, the free mine a mix both of verticality and horizontality, the abandoned mine has more of a horizontal structure. The first room is pretty small and a bridge is leading over a flat crevasse. A pool of water, which is actually present in both modifications, which leads me to believe that it is also integral to the original layout, needs to be traversed by either swimming or jumping. Here the ways part. The path to the left leads down to an underground lake. The path to the right needs to be climbed. Once we arrive at the top, we see the way to the right leading down a bit again, but on the left we step onto a ledge overlooking the lake and the upper walkways. Now heading back and taking the other passage, we walk the wooden structures to the other side, above the body of water. The darkness holds another entrance which leads deeper into the mountain. As you can see, this mine is very convoluted. Alcoves, hidden paths, water, walkways are all crammed together in a relatively small space. We make our way into a big cave, glowing blood ore torches piercing the shadows, a little area for resting to the left, and down below we make out a huge furnace in the dark. The resting place has a few shelves, a chest and a bed. We turn back and follow the way down to the furnace. The way past the smelter leads us into a dead end, but if we observe our surroundings closely, we find a small pond. This is an underwater passage that leads to the lake we discovered earlier. With our burning torch in hand, we now head into the opposite direction, passing by the furnace again. The cave bends and soon we are standing in a massive cabin. Familiar fleshy tubes are creeping along the cold stone of this adit. This is crawler territory. We move on and see the last remnants of a human dwelling in this mountain. The brittle wood of the furniture tells us that it has been a long time since somebody dug ore down here. There is one last area to explore, and it leads even deeper. The tunnel's markings on the side, these very peculiar rock formations, reminds us of a place we have been before. The lair of the Minecrawler Queen. Although this room is changed quite a bit for a quest in the modification, it is pretty safe to say that this was indeed the heart of the crawler nest. This place is unlike any other mine we found in the original game, and I would love to see it being officially brought to life in the remake. But why would we go here? I guess there are tons of possibilities for this endeavor, but one quest stuck out for me in one of the modifications. A possibility that wouldn't even change the main story too much. Before Ian, boss of the old mine, allows us to open the gate to find the crawler's nest, we have to find a cogwheel for a defective ore stumper. This piece can be found in one of the side edits of the old mine, but the modification sends you to the abandoned mine to look for the gear. Some may say it would be just another boring backtracking added to this mission, but I think it is a great way to reintroduce lost content. Officially, we have never seen this mine, so why not sending us down there? Let us explore the reasons why this mine got shut down and find some nice items on the way. The most interesting piece of cut locations is by far the Orc City. When a normal Gothic enjoyer hears Orc City, he might go, "Oh, yes, sure, the Sleeper Temple." That, however, cannot be further from the truth. Yes, in front of the entrance to the Sleeper Temple there are some orc dwellings, but 4 huts and a cave hardly make a city. I always wondered where all the orcs came from in Gothic 1, but even more so in Gothic 2. Of course, some of them came by ships, but the rest of them? I was really entertained by the idea that the hordes came from caves deep below the colony, and imagine my surprise when I learned about the Ork City, the one that never made it into the final version of the game. The process is very similar to the abandoned mine. The main structure, the layout, was developed by the original team, and there was also an entrance point where this area would have loaded. This one is hidden behind the cave at the Stonehenge, and it is also accessible in Gothic 1. However, it is also missing lighting, furniture, items, and of course NPCs. The footage you are about to see is again taken from Returning New Balance. A gloomy tunnel, dimly lit, leads us underground. As we go further, we make out a small ridge over a black pit. As we cross it, we peek into the depths and make out silhouettes of mushrooms, skeletons, and many legs frantically moving. Crawler. The orcs stand guard but won't attack us since we wear the Ulu Mulu, the standard of respect. Here we can take our first look at an orcish dwelling. Crudely hewn into stone, this structure is made out of 4 smaller caves, 2 on the bottom, 2 at the top. The upper ones can only be reached by climbing onto the ledges. From the entrance, we head into a tunnel to the right. The smell of campfires fills our nostrils, and the warmth engulfs us. We have seen this place before as well. This small cave, with adjacent alcoves in which orcs are sitting around bonfires, can also be found at the Sleeper Temple. We make our way back and go into the other direction, which leads deeper into the earth. We spot a dark place, a niche, cobwebbed and full of mushrooms. Peering into the darkness, we can make out a human skeleton and an orc mummy. Through another tunnel, we now reach a big cavernous system and a forked path. We choose to go straight ahead. The cave stretches before our eyes, and we see statues in the shape of orcs supporting a natural column in the middle of a dark hall. Orcish shamans sit around a bonfire, while warriors stand guard. This place is just as convoluted as the abandoned mine. We see an upper level from here, so we make our way back and take the other path, leading up to some kind of gate, guarded by tall pillars, archaic runes etched into them. This is the center, the main hall. Orc hunters and scouts dance around the fire, casting shadows at the walls and revealing more holes leading to more orc dwellings. These sprawling caves are jam-packed with orcs. And now, it makes sense why the valley got literally flooded with them after the barrier fell. This is but a fraction of this subterranean city. We move on past the living quarters and into a huge hallway. On the left, massive orc statues tower over the shadows, illuminated by braziers nearby. Straight ahead lies the arena. Originally, the arena had a big pit in the middle where the fights occurred. Tunnels adjacent to the pit lead to more dwellings and smaller caves. I could go on and on describing the atmosphere in here, describing the throne room, showing the lower levels, the gates which lead God knows where, but in the end, it only can be understood once you walk these halls yourself. We know fairly little about the orcs, but the places we visit during a Gothic 1 playthrough give us a small insight into their culture. This, however, is showing an aspect that we haven't seen yet about the orcs and their ways. Sure, we saw the graveyard, and we learned a few things about how they treat their ancestors, and we also witnessed the gloomy magnificence of the Sleeper Temple, with all its gigantic architecture and deep chasms, but this is something else. It tells us about their way of life, where they sleep, what they do when they are not attacking humans or hunt. It shows us a very different aspect of their very nature. I would love to go there and explore these depths, to soak up new lore and getting engulfed by the atmosphere, led by the ethereal sound of the music that we heard in the Sleeper's Lair. But what could be the reason leading us into this Orc City? I think it would make perfect sense to go down here to find a way to open the Temple of the Sleeper. I always felt that grabbing an idol by telekinesis or using a simple teleport spell was very anticlimactic. It should have been a real fight and journey to get the key to the sanctuary of the orcs. And the Orc City holds this key, and also solves the problem of later chapters being very short. While making this video, I stumbled upon more news, and it seems that the alternative mountain pass isn't the only location which got altered in the Switch version. The abandoned mine and the Orc City received some proper lighting and textures. You can now visit these spaces in the Switch port and explore these areas in their original form. However, you won't find any NPCs, quests, or items down there. The YouTuber RCL made videos about these dungeons, and I will link them in the description down below. Thanks RCL for the footage. Now let's move on to the last and also least interesting location I'd like to discover. The mountainous regions always captured my imagination when it came to the Gothic games, and they have quite the significance. In Gothic 2, for example, most of the bandits came from the mountains, but we never see those places in particular. In Gothic 1, there is a similar situation. In Gothic 2, it is said that the orcs came down from the mountains before they laid siege upon the old camp, and I want to see where exactly they came from. Imagine smaller orcish camps nestled in between the peaks, and the area between the Free Mine and the Sleeper Temple being accessible to the player, exploring new areas which would fill the gaps in the story and giving the orcish presence in the valley more weight. I know that the space in the games is limited, but most of these regions in the periphery are just dead zones. The remake could be the chance to fill out these regions which were devoid of any detail and life. Well, that basically sums it up. I hope I could get some of you on this train of thought and make clear how important some of these locations actually are for a more believable world building. Nevertheless, I thank you all for watching, and I wish you a good one. May the sleeper awaken.